How long have you
Uh,
been working as a quantity surveyor in Kenya?
I've been in this profession since 2015. That's 10 years.
10 years. Wow.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
that's 10 years.
Yeah. And what
Uh,
inspired you to come into this profession?
my family background, my extended family is mainly in construction field.
After you graduated, there is this saying in Kenya, like, did you have to
Yeah.
do any tamaking before you actually landed your first job as a QS?
Yeah, I can't deny we did, though not for long.
What you're bringing to the table right now, especially in my
Yeah.
project in Kisii, is 10 years of experience, not just in real estate for like, residential, but you've also developed commercial projects, right?
Yeah, we do all types of projects from
Okay.
residential projects. We have commercial projects.
My next question is, so how affordable is it to hire a quantity surveyor in Kenya?
A content surveyor is very affordable in the nation because actually the gazetted rates for our services is normally.
Hello, everybody. I'm out for my evening walk, per usual, and I thought I'd come on and share this video of my interview that I had with the quantity surveyor to my project in Kisii. In this interview, he talks about his, educational background, his years of experience. He talks about what he brings to the table. He talks about so many other things. Also, at the very end of the video, he gives that advice about some of the things that you need to be on the lookout if you're planning on building in Kenya. This video is not intended for everybody. I'm sure there's some who are going to find it very boring. It is cut dry. Video was recorded over Zoom, but I'm going to post the whole thing here. It's probably going to be in two parts. And for those people who are intending to or who are already in the process of doing construction in Kenya, I think you're going to find some of the information he shares in this video very important that you could use towards your construction project. So, without further ado, here's the rest of the interview. My next question is, and maybe this is going to be at least truly the beginning of this interview, is what do you exactly do when it comes to, I mean, what's your role when it comes to a construction project? Tell people what a QS does and how you benefit a client.
So a QS is generally an expert in construction cost and contract administration. And our main role is, to analyze the relationship between design, that's the designs which are normally prepared by either the architects and engineers. We have the architecture and structure. So we have both the architects and engineers preparing the designs and their relationship to costs. Because construction projects are about costs. And costs are what determines whether a client will be able to fully implement the ideas that he or she have in mind. So one of the most important and the most critical thing for the critical point in a project is to onboard a QS who will be able to advise the client even at that very early design stage on whether the design, even if the design meets all the other requirements, the functional, the dimensional, the technological aspects, whether he or she will be able to implement that. That do the client have enough budget for that? Or do we go back to the drawing board and do some value engineering, some changes in design, so that the design suits the budget, the client's budget? So that's our major role in the construction industry. And of course, now there's the contract administration part in which that comes in now when we get to the other stages of construction, from the tendering to now the real groundwork, which is now the construction part, where we do valuations and variations that analysis, we cost them, do an analysis for that. We also now end up now preparing even final accounts for projects.
Okay.
But we also do offer anyway project management services, which mainly basically their clients will come to us and the client doesn't have a team in mind. So we assemble the whole team from the architect to the engineers, the structural engineers, the services engineers. we assemble them and take charge of the design, and we advise the client on how the process will go, all the steps that we'll go into, and we manage the whole team,
Wow.
including our doing reporting and managing the whole team even during construction period.
Okay, so that is just the branch of project management, which you just briefly touched on. I know you just mentioned something about valuations, but I'm going to come back to that, and I think that's something that I need you to explain more and why that is important, especially for anyone who's doing a project in Kenya, but more so for people who are like, away, let's say in the diaspora who are building remotely that might not be present on the ground. So we'll want to come back to that. I just want to move on to the next question, and this is more going to be your role as far as when it comes to construction. And I'm reading these questions off a list that I created. At what stage does someone need to bring you in as a quantity surveyor?
So as quantity surveyors, we should come in to any project at the very initial stage, at the preliminary stage of the project. That's the very moment the design work starts. That's the time that we start giving cost advice to the client and also cost planning, so that even as the design progresses, we can have a budget in mind. The client can have his or her budget in mind, and we now move to the point of advising the architect on some of the factors to consider, so that we stay within the client's budget and we still achieve a design which is aesthetically pleasing, and it's also functional and meets the client's requirement.
Okay, so
So we should come in at the very early stage, at the design stage of a project.
okay. Now, for those clients or for those people who have already, broken ground, have started a project, but now have realized the mistake they made for not hiring a QS, are you able to come in and then kind of guide them from whatever their project is until the project is done? Can you like come in the middle?
Sure, we do. We do come in. Actually, that happens a lot, especially in Kenya. There are so many clients who hire any consultants at the very early stages of construction, and then when they face challenges, say in the progress of the site construction stages, they face challenges. Then they come to us. Maybe they have issues to do with the contractors. He's claiming more monies, and he has not done much, or the client is not even sure whether he or she is getting value for his or her money. So we come in to do valuations. So initial valuation reports. So valuation reports involves us getting to the various sites where the construction is taking place. We take measurements. We cost each and every element that's been done, that's been built. We then go and sit and analyze those measurements. We quantify them. We allocate cost to them and determine whether the client is getting value for his or her money. Sometimes this happens when the client have not involved consultants in the very early stages of construction, or even when during the implementation stage. And I know contractors do take advantage of, there are contractors who offer services. They talk of design and build. So they design for the client and build. That, of course, gives the contractor an upper hand in terms of controlling the costs of the project, and they end up stealing from the client. But once we come in, we now verify that indeed whatever the contractors are claiming, or whoever is doing the construction project is claiming to have used or to have spent, is really the actual cost of that project.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying that there is contractors out there. I mean, I'm pretty sure there are many of them that offer the design and build.
Yeah.
But, the cautionary tale to that is while that might work for some people, in some situations, it's not necessarily the best route to go, right?
Yeah, I agree. It works sometimes, but you see now the only challenge with that is that the client doesn't have the expertise to determine whether the costs that he or she is being charged on, whether they are the actual costs that are will go into the project. So the quality and the cost controls, the quality control, and even the quantity control, because sometimes the contractor can inflate quantities, and
Right.
the client cannot be able to tell whether the quantities are the real quantities or not. And there's also the quality control. As a client, as a developer, you cannot be able to tell whether the concrete work meets the requirements, whether the masonry meets the requirements, the required strength, but that can only be determined by an expert in that field. And those experts are us, the quantity surveyors. That's why we come in to assist you in determining whether are you getting value for your money. Because most contractors will focus on the finishing. You have a project have structural failures, but you can't be able to tell them when you are just a client, because the finishing will look so nice and so good. You can't be able to tell that there are structural failures in the building that will arise now or later after he or she have left the site.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a word of caution to, people that are either currently building or those planning to build, it is important to have the right professionals to work on your projects. It's just not about, hey, I want a building done and, this and so person or this cousin of mine or this uncle of mine or this friend of mine has built several houses before, then they can just do mine. Sometimes, you just need to take a step back, find the right people. Yes, it might cost a few more shillings, but at the end of the day, the peace of mind that comes from knowing that everything was done right, that there is no price for that. Now, I want to move on to the next question. What essential information do you need from a client to start effectively managing their construction project?
So the essential information that we normally need from a client is one, of course, the client have to give us a brief of the kind of project they want to come up with or they have in mind.
Okay.
And two, also the project location, because project location it have lots of determines a lot on what you can put up. So we have in Kenya we have zoning, what we call
Okay.
zoning. So there are
Okay.
areas that you cannot just build flat. Yeah. So the areas which are set, the codes that are there are that you can only build a certain house, say a maisonette or a bungalow, based on the regulations that exist in that locality. So you have to give us your brief on what do you have in mind, what would be the location of that project. Then we got the other point of what budget are you looking at? Are we looking at a budget, doing a project with a budget of say 10 million or 50 million or 100 million? Because that will also determine the space allocation when the design is being done by the architect.
Okay.
So when a client gives us is able to share with us the budget, we also now as quantity surveyors we're able to guide the architect on the size of rooms that they should be able to consider, or the print area of the whole building that the client can be able to put up at that budget based on the prevailing market prices for similar projects.
Wow. Okay. So that just actually opened my mind to something else that I didn't know. So the question was, what do people need to provide you, the QS, before they start the project? And number one, you mentioned they need to give you a brief of what the kind of project they're trying to do. Location is important, and tied to location is you mentioned the zoning. I wasn't aware about zoning rules in Kenya, so I'm glad that you brought that up. And then, of course, most important is the budget, because you can have a brief, a design project, and your budget, and those two are not in line, right? Those two are, two different things, But this zoning, um, wow. the zoning thing, I think is the reason why we've seen in the past some projects being torn down because somebody had a piece of land that was maybe zoned for a flat or like a bungalow, and they decided to put a 10-story building right there. And then, when the government came and decided to crack down, they were like, no, you can't build here, So I did not know that. I'm glad you mentioned that. Um, do you know if these zoning rules apply in the villages or are they mostly in the cities?
Basically, the zoning normally should be countrywide because
Okay.
the municipal councils that we used to have before now, the county governments came up. They used to have those regulations on
Okay.
how and on where you can put up a certain type of project.
Okay.
Uh, Now that was passed on to the county governments that we have, and they still do have their zoning and regulations that are put in place. But
Okay.
also you find that even as they are, we also do have the farm and farmhouses.
Okay.
So farmhouses are buildings that come up in the villages. But even as you put those houses in the villages, you have to seek approval from the city county. That's why we submitted, like say, the drawings of your project to the
Hmm.
county so that they can approve. So
Right.
one of the reasons why they couldn't reject that project to go on is because it met the requirements of the area.
Okay.
You are not prohibited to build a mansion in your locality.
Okay.
So the areas that you are not allowed to build, say, even permanent structures based on the whether the area is, say, near rivers and such. So
Right.
we have those regulations that are in place.
Wow.
They are actually meant to be countrywide.
Wow. Actually, I wasn't aware of that. And now looking back, I'm glad that I actually, sought out the services from the architect, people like you, the structural engineer, the electrical engineer. And, now that I'm looking back, knowing that behind the scenes, you guys were actually, looking at all these things and making sure that the project I was trying to do, even though it was going to be on an ancestral land, in a local town, in a village, actually met all the requirements across the board. That way,
Yeah.
10 years, 20 years down the road, nobody comes up and say, you were not supposed to build here. We're just going to take it down, because, you build a house in a wrong spot. Thank you for clarifying
Agree.
that. And that actually kind of blows my mind. Moving on to the next question. What are the key responsibilities do you as a quantity surveyor take on a construction project?
So our key responsibilities in the construction project, as I mentioned, we come in at the very initial stage to give cost advice.
Okay.
So at that point, we are able to give the advice and come up with the project cost estimates for the project at hand. We first prepare the preliminary estimates, which are based on the preliminary designs, conceptual designs that are prepared by the architect. So at that point, we are able now to advise on whether do the design continue as it is, or do we need to change the design to conform and to have that to create a relationship between the design and the cost and the grants budget. So the next stage that we normally move on is the contracting stage, or rather what we call tendering stage. Tendering stage is now means that we have already firmed up on the project's costs, and we have agreed with the client and the team that the client is able to meet the cost of the project. So we can now engage contractors. Contractors are skilled personnel who come in now to do the actual work, and they are normally registered contractors. So at the tendering stage, we invite bids. These bids are sent out. We send out a blank bill of quantities with, of course, specifications and conditions that are to be met. And the client, we normally request the client to nominate one or two contractors who can be invited to tender. The architect can also nominate, and the engineers can nominate. We can also nominate, and we now those nominated contractors will be invited to tender for the project. Of course, we give them a certain period to return their tenders. Once they return back their tenders, which must meet now all the conditions that are normally set out in that contract document, we do analysis. We do what we call tender evaluation. Tender evaluation have two components. One is technical evaluation. Technical evaluation of a tender is whereby we check on the stability of how is the contractor registered. If he is registered, do he have the necessary permits? Like he must be registered by the National Construction Authority. He also must have the practicing license from National Construction Authority. He must also have things like a valid tax compliance. He must have his company registration certificate. He must also share his valid single business permit, which each and every contractor must have. Normally, we also request the contractors to share bank statements for us to be able to determine their financial capability or capacity to handle the project at hand. And of course, we also request them to share CVs for their personnel, their site agents and foremen. We also require them to submit a list of the equipment that they own and which will be used now, which they intend to use for the project. So we also request them to share a list of projects of similar nature that they have done, so that we can determine their experience in as far as that such kind of projects are concerned. So that's a technical evaluation. So whoever normally passes that technical evaluation, we go now to the next point of doing the financial evaluation, or rather pricing analysis. So the financial evaluation is we normally do it to analyze the prices in which they have submitted, so that we analyze whether the rates are reasonable, whether they suit the market rate, and whether the rates are sufficient to carry out the works. You can't say, for example, say that you want to do a door which is worth 50,000, you want to do it at 30,000. It means that that rate is not sufficient for that door. So it also helps us to determine their seriousness. Yeah, their seriousness in terms of the they research well in as far as the project is concerned. Are they experienced enough? Are there missed rates? Are there arithmetic errors that they have made, in their tenders and things like that? There's also what we call front loading. Front loading is where a contractor allocates so much money in works that will be done at the initial stages of the project, and allocate very little to the works that will be done at the finishing stage. What that means is that that normally tells us that the contractor have no intention of completing the project. They just want to come in, make profit, and then disappear. So
Wow.
as they submit that, of course, there are so many other items and things that we require them to do, like the insurances and the likes and performance boards, and all those are are considered at that point of the tendering stage. So
So
after we, sorry, yes,
before you go to the next point, I want to
yeah,
circle back and actually um kind of highlight several things you've mentioned, because like what I was asking about, like what are your key responsibilities? And that's now responsibility number two that you've just listed. So many things where most people didn't know this. I didn't know this part when I was beginning this project in Kisii. So now
yeah,
I'm hearing all these things. I'm saying to myself, wow, I'm so glad that I went this route. Yes, it cost me a little bit extra, but I was not going into this project
completely blind. So let me mention a couple of things you said. You talked about the preliminary estimates, and that's where you talk about the bills of quantities, the whole nine. So you made those. However, your second role was more like, the tendering, the bids and the tendering that have to be done by the contractors. And your role as a QS is to come in, verify that that contractor who's submitting a bid is registered, they have an NCA license, they're tax compliant with the KRA in Kenya, because you do not want the government to come after you and the contractor after when you start a project
Yeah.
and you're halfway through and then they shut them down. You want to make sure they have a valid business permit to do business in Kenya. You are looking at their bank statements to make sure they have enough money to procure materials, or actually do this project and pay people. You're looking at the
Yeah.
CV of the main, maybe the partners or the main
The
engineer,
foreman, the
yeah,
site
the
agents.
foremen and stuff like that. You're also looking at the list of the equipment that they have as a contractor. Somebody coming in, they want to build, a five-story building, and all they have is a wheelbarrow. You probably don't want that person coming to build that
Sure.
building right there. You're also looking at similar projects that they have done in the past. So, and I noticed this during our interview, when we were in this phase of the planning, you were like, these people have only done a project, let's say worth 5 million.
Yeah,
I don't think you can go from 5 million and then try to do a project that is worth, let's say, 20 million. So
definitely.
you have to look at that and be like, has this company, progressively done a more expensive project, and was that project taken all the way to the very end? And finally, you mentioned something about front loading. When a contractor has no intention of finishing your project, they're going to do everything at the very beginning and then pretty much leave you with the structure standing. It's done, but it was never finished, you know.
Sure.
So that's just the second thing you say that you do in a project. Okay, now let's move on to the third thing. What are your other roles? I mean, I'm bored. My mind is already blown.
So after we issue the tender report, which we normally release it to the team,
Okay.
and mail it to the client, because the tender report now guides the client on determining whether we do include now a recommendation in that tender report based on now on their strengths, on whether someone was technically qualified, and now whether how they fare in terms of the pricing, because the financial their financial evaluation now will determine who to be awarded. What I can say is that it's not always that the lowest contractor is awarded the contract, because you may be awarded the contract, but you don't have the capacity to handle it. So that would mean that you start the project, but then you face lots of difficulties during the implementation stage. So we normally now give a recommendation, of course, with several reasons that we always list the reasons of why we recommend so and so to be awarded the contract. And once the client now makes a decision and that we can consider, actually, let me say this, before he even considers the award, in our recommendation, we normally indicate that we recommend that so and so is suitable to be considered for award. But even before you consider the award, we must invite them to give discounts on several several items that we may have picked up that they have quoted higher than the market rate. So they have to give us discounts, and even we also look at their completion periods, because you may find that a contractor have given a completion period of 2 years for a project that we expect to take 10 months. So even if you have quoted the lowest, but then you intend to take 2 years in the project, and the project should run and be completed in 10 months, then it means you have to give us a discount in terms of the completion period. And we also now advise the client that if all these contractors meet all these requirements, give their discount and we are comfortable with their completion periods, then we can now consider awarding the lowest, whoever will now submit the lowest. That lowest means he have met all the requirements, he have not underquoted in his rates, he have not overquoted, he have given discounts on items that he have overquoted, and he have emerged as the best. So that the contractor that we recommend the clients normally to consider awarding.
Wow.
So once we receive now the communication from the client that indeed the contractor is who's been awarded, we now get to the point of contract award and contract acceptance. So we issue contract award letters to the contractor and regulate letters to those who never made it. And of course now whoever is awarded have to sign an acceptance. Now that gives room for us to move to next stage of contract signing.
Wow. Okay. So I know you saw that video that I sent you, and I posted a small segment in there for the contract signing when we were sitting in my brother's house and we were going through the contract signing. First of all, that process took a whole lot of time.
I know.
But like I said in that video, I felt confident that I was not walking into like a minefield, just signing something. I have no idea what's going on because I had, full faith and confidence in your services in making sure that you've done the due diligence, making sure that that contract does not have any clauses that are going to come back and bite me in the back, 10 months down the road. So to recap what you were talking about, you know, um, when you receive those, beads from these contractors, you're going to do a summary, a side by side, maybe take 2, 3, maybe even 4 contractors who have submitted their beads, do a comparison side by side with a summary, and then do recommendations to the client and say, hey, this might not be the cheapest, but this one right here that charges a little bit more is actually more realistic because number one, they're not, claiming that they're going to be the cheapest and take 3 years to finish a project when a project is indeed meant to be done, let's say, for example, in 10 months. The other thing you mentioned in there very briefly was you're going to go back and do discount negotiation, which is very important because I realize sometimes I could be negotiating with somebody right now in Kenya, and I have to take their word for whatever they say that's going to cost. However, when I have you and I go to somebody and I say, hey, I want a discount on that, and you're saying, yes, give that discount, it's like they know that there is somebody else who knows how much that item costs in Kenya. So they're not turning around and then charging me double because I'm in the diaspora. But they're also negotiating with, Mr. Gatitu right there in Kenya. And he's like, yeah, no, it doesn't cost that much. So you need to bring that price down. And then, of course, the key thing you talked about is, people have to be very careful about contractors who say their completion period is, let's say, 20 something months, when really that project should take between 8 to 10 months. So a lot of people just really need to be aware about that. All right. So I want to move on to the next part which is, and this might be related to the negotiations and cost and stuff like that. How do you help clients stick to the budget after a project has begun?
So how we help the client to stick to the budget, or rather to to be able to fund the project to completion, is that we employ cost control measures, and part of the cost control measures is that no work should be done by the contractor before no additional work should be done by the contractor before it's approved. He shares a quote for that, and the budget is approved by the client. The client says, yes, I've given a go ahead, I'm comfortable with that. So we normally give conditions to the contractors that even at the very initial stages, that once you realize that something is a variation has come up, you must communicate early enough to give us room to advise the client that the effect of this will be this much, and the client approves the budget for that. And once it's approved, now it becomes part of the contract, the projected contract final account. And we also do prepare what we call financial appraisals in the course of construction. The financial appraisal are normally a projection of how much do we expect the project to end at in terms of considering the work already done and the works which are not yet done and but which have to be done for the project to be termed as complete. So that normally prepares the client early enough to know that he or she needs so much this much to be able to have the project completed. Of course, in our bid of quantities, we have a sum that we call contingency sum. So a contingency sum is normally a sum that we include in the bid of quantities, normally about 5% or so, to take care of unforeseen events that may arise in the course of construction. No project anyway that gets completed without having any variations. The variations can be negative or positive depending on what they are and how they have come up. But at most times they tend to lead to an increment in the project cost. But most importantly, before we even award the contract, we ensure that accommodation is put in place, that the contract is a fixed price contract. A fixed price contract means that the rates in which the contractors have quoted will not fluctuate or change in the course of the whole construction period. That normally does not happen in government projects. And that's why you'll find that the government may start a project that's worth 5 billion, but the project ends up costing some 7 billion. So we are alive to the fact that private clients, or most of developers that we engage with, don't have that room for so much fluctuation in terms of the price. They cannot be able to absorb the additional costs that arise from price fluctuations. And so what happens is that we ensure that the contract is a fixed price contract from the word go. That's why we also take much time when signing the contract. I know you remember we took some time because I have to take the contractor through. I have to show him through that, this a fixed price contract. You have to read through and understand each and every point that's in the contract document, so that you don't come later when we are already on site and start saying, you know what, the price of this has gone up, so I can't be able to continue the project. That's not allowed. So, and of course, we do have the project timeline, and the project timeline normally allows us to, if a contractor is able to complete a project within the allowed project timeline, it means that we will not have so much cost overruns in terms of the price fluctuations. So that also helps in shielding the contractor from unforeseen price overruns in the cost of materials and the likes. And for them now to stick to those timelines, what we normally do is that we do apply what we call liquidated damages for delay in completion. So the liquidated damages ensures that, or pushes the contractor to complete the project within timeline, so that everyone is comfortable and everyone is able to attend to the project to completion.
Wow.
So those are some of the measures that we do employ in the course of construction projects to ensure that we don't have cost overruns and we are in full control of the cost of the project.
Okay, so I'm going to recap a few things that you mentioned on there. Your job as a QS is you're going to make sure that the contractor who's working on site does not do any additional work before a client approves. So if the contractor is doing something and they realize that, oh, we need to maybe modify it to make the project safe or make the building safer, before that modification can be done, which was probably not in the budget, they have to let you know, you have to budget it, send it to the client, and the client has to actually agree, give a green light before that actually proceeds. Hence, that's the reason why you're controlling cost. Number two, and I think you mentioned it, the idea about fixed contracts. So like when this contractor is taking on your project, if they say if you and the contractor agree that the project is going to cost 5 million shillings, they can't come around tomorrow and say, oh, well, everything is now 10 million, right? So
Yeah, sure.
that's important. Um, Another thing you mentioned was the liquidated damages, meaning that if you tell me it's going to take 8 months or 10 months or 12 months to finish a project, and now we are pushing month 14, 15, 16, I, the client, can turn around and sue you or follow you for liquidated damages for not completing that project on time. So that's why it's important to actually go through the bidding process and select the right contractor who's not only going to do your project on a time in a timely manner and within budget. Before I move on to the next question, I want you to briefly touch on, explain what is a BQ and what's inside a BQ, because I don't think we talked about that.
So a BQ is basically a representation of the architect's design in terms of the cost of each and every element that's in the design. We build all those elements from the excavation, from the substructure works to the wallings, the doors, windows, finishes, balustrades, the electrical, mechanical, all those items and elements that go into each and every project are built. We have their quantities, and we also do have their rates, which suits the market rates for those for each and every item of similar nature. And of course, now that it's up now giving us the overall cost of the project. So the BQ normally is grouped into several bills. The major one, the major one is a builder's work, which now comprises of now the doors, windows, all the elements. That's the substructure works, the doors, windows, wallings, the RC work, the balustrades, and the likes. We also have now the prime cost sums, which are normally the electrical and mechanical works. Those sums are normally for works done by specialists, because at most time we tend to give these works to specialists. We would want as mechanical subcontractor to be on board, and an electrical subcontractor, a CCTV, someone to do with the fire fighting and fire systems, the intruder alarms, things are like that. Like those are done by specialists. So we do normally do have them as part of the prime cost sums. And we also have provisional sums. Provisional sums are for works which are not yet measured at the time of going to tender or at the time of preparing the bills, but are works that may be done in the project or in the course of the project. So some of those works, say for example, you have the external works. You may need to do a driveway, and you have not yet made up your mind on how do I do this driveway? How do I do a live fence? Do I do a masonry perimeter fence, or what kind of fence am I going to do? So there are so many items that can come in there based on the client ideas. And before now, the client makes up his or her mind fully. We do allocate an amount for that will take care of those works when we get now to the project implementation stage. We also do have preliminaries. Preliminaries are costs that goes into a project but will not be at the very final, or rather they cannot be seen at the end of the project. Those costs are costs such as security. A project will always require to be secure. We require the project to have what we call hoarding. Hoarding is what we normally most contractors do it with mabati. That's to secure the site. You have to do a kind of temporary fence that to secure the site from intruders and also from any debris that may fall into outside now the site. And we also have safety nets that come in handy to prevent dust from getting to the neighborhood. We do have insurances. The insurances, we have two types of insurance. We have what we call contractors all risk, commonly known as CAR. contractors always ensures the whole works, including from theft, from collapse, from any form of harm that can come along the way. We also have WIBA insurance. That's our workers' insurance benefits insurance. That covers the contractors, workers, and it ensures that whenever there's say an accident, or even accidents do happen, or and even death can happen in the course of construction, the client is shielded. You cannot sue the client for an accident that have happened in his or her site if the contractor have WIBA insurance in place, because that insurance will take care of that. We also do have water bills and electricity bill. You know that there's so much water that goes into a construction site. There's so much water, electricity that goes into a construction site. So those bills are met by the contractor, not by the client. That's when, if you have a full contract, those are some of the costs that we normally do consider now in the preliminaries, including the scaffolds, because for the contractor to be able to do works at high levels, he needs to have scaffolds. So he must provide that. And you also have a performance board. A performance board is a security or a guarantee that the contractor gives to the client that indeed he will do the works to completion. So those are the preliminary items that we do have in a project. So mainly construction projects are grouped into those four, let me say four items. We have now the builder's work, that's the main work. We have the prime cost sums, which are the electrical, mechanical, and things like CCTV, lift, because we do have buildings with lifts and the rest. We also now have the provisional sums, and under the provisional sums, that's where we also now do include the contingency, which takes care of any unforeseen events that may come in. And we also now do have the preliminary items which I've mentioned, which are there are more. I might not have mentioned everything, because we do have site stores. There's a store, like in your site you have a store.
Yeah.
We do have samples. The contractor have to deliver samples for approval. I know it have been the case even in our project. Have been delivering samples for us to approve before he delivers now the whole of the items. So those are some of the things that require the contractor to have, and of course the safety equipment, the helmets and the the reflector jackets that is workmen will have. We also have he have to do tests, like mainly the concrete tests. Those have to be done to ascertain that the concrete work that he is doing have met the required strength.
Wow. Okay. So the BQ is not just something you randomly just come up with. It's a really well detailed. In my last video, I mentioned it's almost like a financial roadmap. It's more of like, this is everything that is going to go into this project. We're measuring how many iron sheets are you going to use. We're measuring how many lorries or trucks or ballast you're going to need. We're measuring how many bags of cement does it take to pour a foundation. We're measuring how much water you're going to need to actually do this project. So the BQ is, I'm looking at the BQ that you sent me when we were starting this project, and I'm looking at this thing is 40 pages long. So, and like you mentioned, it talks about the preliminaries. It talks about the main building itself. It talks about the provisional costs and stuff like that. And it would probably take me a good 2-3 hours to actually go through this word for word, making sure that I understand. But there is something you mentioned in this, in the last segment you were talking about, and that is about insurance. I think I want to just kind of have you just elaborate a little bit the importance of not just selecting the right contractor who's insured and bonded, right? But also making sure that if you're doing a construction project in Kenya, first you need to make sure that there is insurance on the site. but also talk about WIBA, the WIBA insurance, and why that is also important. So let's start with just general insurance. Why should we have insurance on a site?
So the main reason why we need the contractor's all risk insurance is that it covers the works in case of any eventuality. Like for instance, I remember in your project, there's a time we had theft.
Yes.
So if we had not had it as a mandatory requirement that a contractor must have a contractor's all risk insurance, you are the one who, as a client, you are the one who would have met that cost for all the items that were stolen. But now that gave you, some comfort that you did not have to incur any extra charges or any extra costs that are unplanned for after that theft happened. So the contractors or risk covers the works as a whole for in case of any eventuality, even collapse or any other eventuality that can arise. Normally that's covered under that contractors or risk. The
Okay.
WIBA,
Yes.
the WIBA is now covers the contractors workers against injuries, including death.
Wow.
Injuries are inevitable in any construction site because workers are workers anyway. They always at times in their course of duty encounter injuries in any happens. So no one can sue the client or so for an injury that happened in your site or even death, can happen.
Wow. Wow.
So if you have that insurance in place, you are shielded from you cannot be sued, you cannot, no one can, can come claiming so much from you because of anything that might have happened to him or her at the site.
Okay. Okay. That's good that you mentioned that. So insurance is important because a contractor that has insurance makes sure that you're pretty much shielded. Like in the situation in mine where there was theft of electrical items, insurance covered that. Next, you as a QS make sure that the contractor working on site has the WIBA insurance, which is like workers. It covers the people that are working on site in case of an injury or even death. Me, the client, will not have to come out of my pocket to actually compensate, let's say, the family in case of something like a serious injury happens. Finally, I want to talk about something you mentioned about a performance bond. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
So a performance board is normally an insurance cover that we ensure that the contractor provides us with it to cover the client in case of any in case the contractor abandons site or he fails to complete the works as it were. Normally, it covers about 10% of the project cost, mainly because why we don't require them to cover so the full or rather the full cost amount is because we only pay them for work done. So that's one thing. So even if the contractor was to abandon site, it would basically mean that you have only paid him for the work that you have done, but the inconvenience that the contractor will cause the client before the client gets another contractor or someone else to come on board and finish the works, then the client gets some compensation for that. And that's why we now require the contractor to provide a performance board equivalent to about 10% of the project cost.
I'm glad you clarified that, statement about the performance bond, essentially, providing coverage to the client should the contractor who was awarded, the contract to do a project, should they decide to abandon the project, the client then can come back and say, hey, I'm going to sue you for X, Y, Z or a certain amount of money. And you say it's up to about 10% because when you guys are involved in a project, the client is not paying the full amount of money ahead of time. The client is only paying portions as work is done throughout. So I still want to put a pin on that because I think that is going to fall under the valuations, which we're going to talk about, a little bit later. let me move on to the next part. And this part is going to cover um, more about the cost. So how affordable is it to hire a quantity surveyor in Kenya?
A quantity surveyor is very affordable in the nation because actually the gazetted rates for our services, for our full services, that from the inception to completion of the project, is normally 3.75%. That's a gazetted, and that rate is spread throughout the project, such that there are costs that come in at the time, there are fees that we charge for the services that we offer at the initial stages. That's the preparation of the preliminary estimates, the for preparation of farm cost estimates, the tendering and the likes, and tender reporting, the contract signing, all that. So there's a fee that we charge for that. We call that, the whole of that, we call it pre-contract period, or rather pre-contract phase. And we now have the post-contract. Post-contract means that the project implementation have already commenced, and so we will only get paid, say, based on the progress of work at the site, or based on and that's normally, of course, determined by even the variations that we do.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. So there is the pre-contract phase, which is the BQ, the preliminaries, the tendering, the contract signing, and then after all that is done, people have broken ground, and then some of your fees are spread on through the post-contract phase,
Yeah,
meaning you're being paid after some milestones have been met on a specific
sure,
project, right?
sure.
Okay.
So
Now,
that's paid now based on the milestones that have been met. I know I had broken that down even when we were quoting for your project, because that's normally the case.
right.
And of course, that's also reflected even in the valuation, because the valuation reports that we issue in the course of construction will can actually give you an indication of what percentage of work is done. So that whatever amount we seek as payment for our fees, normally shows the percentage that we had for the
Okay.
fees that are paid for post contract.
Okay. And you did mention that the gazetted rate is 3.75% of the cost of the contract. So if let's say
Yeah,
somebody's going to build a house for 2 million shillings, the cost, for your fees, it's about 3.75% of that.
yeah.
Now, I want to ask you a question. Like, have you encountered clients who would come to you and say, hey, I need your services. Can you write me a BQ? And then they don't want to maybe retain your services throughout the project all the way to see it's finished, that you just draft the BQ, hand it to them, and then you just walk away.
Yeah, that happens many times, especially for the Lulo project and this small project. Mainly because sometimes you'll find that the client doesn't have even all the money required for the project, but he needs some guide on so that he can be able to plan himself. So we do offer those services that we agree on a fee for that, for the preparation of the bid of quantities, and once we agree on that, we move ahead to prepare the bills and we get paid for that. Of course, we normally require or request the clients that once they get to the implementation stage, they can always be able to reach out to us and also let us know that the project is progressing.
Okay.
For a high valued project, say you are doing an apartment block, then at that point, we normally require you to inform us the very moment you commence construction, mainly because of the liability that we bear. They are high risk in terms of they can collapse. Mansionettes and bungalows, the chances of that building collapsing or any such thing happening are very minimal. So we do allow the clients to even build themselves, and some may not even come back to you. But
Okay.
for these high risk projects like flats and apartments and malls and things like that, we do require, and even the grading bodies are like you have to register your project with the NCA, with NEMA, and the like. So they always require you to have a team of professionals who are offering the services to them. Actually, the National Construction Authority will always require you to issue them with a commitment letter from your consultant, indicating that they indeed will be in the project to completion.
Wow.
But now for the small projects, like now the bungalows and the likes, those ones you have a level of having the design done or even the BQ done, and you go and plan your construction at your own pace.
Okay. Yeah. And it's important that we mention that that if you did a BQ for someone, they're not necessarily paying 3.75%. They're
Sure.
coming to you and maybe negotiating, a one-time fee for you to actually take care of that, hand them the BQ, and then they just take it and build. Because we understand, like you mentioned, not everybody has the entire budget for the project all at once. Some people are building their houses in stages. They will do the foundation, come back 6 months later, build the walls, come back, another 6 months, put on the roof, come back another 6 months, and maybe do the windows and the doors and stuff like that. So that's important. There is a thing that you had mentioned previously about generating like a cost estimate of materials, not necessarily like a BQ. What is that? Can you explain what that means?
We call that a material schedule.
Okay.
So a material schedule is mainly required by clients who want to undertake the project on their own, mainly for this small project. And it's normally a Riemann language BQ. Let me call it that. Because what happens is that for you to have the material schedule, we normally first prepare the standard BQ and then go ahead now to indicate now the various quantities for each and every item that will be required. Say, for example, concrete work. Concrete work involves sand, cement, and ballast. So when you're going to buy, say, sand, you can't buy sand in cubic, the way we build it. You can't say, I want to buy concrete. You have to buy each and every specific element that goes into concrete. That's you have to buy sand. Sand is sold in tons in Kenya, and the same case happens to ballast. They're sold in tons, and we have cement, which is sold in bags. So we normally now calculate the total number of bags that the client requires to do his or her project, the total number of tons of sand, the total number of tons of ballast, the machinery, the number of pieces that he require, or the feet, if it's the case of foundation machinery, that's normally measured in feet. So we normally indicate that, and it makes it very easy for the client to make purchases, and even now because there are so many clients that buy all the materials and then before they even commence the project, or even they pay for the materials in hardwares and directs to pick them later when they start the construction. There are those arrangements that clients do make in such cases.
Okay.
So that material schedule, it's a material schedule which the clients normally now uses it's a guide to them for them to purchase the materials.
Okay. That's very good, and I'm glad that we covered some of these things. Like the material schedule, especially for those who are not, truly ready with not everybody has a different budget, like somebody who has a budget that can just hire somebody and just take care of it. But I'm glad that you guys offer a service. And once again, the material schedule is something that you would have to, discuss a fee, like a gentleman's agreement, a fee, and, you take time and you prepare. How long does it take to prepare a BQ or a material schedule for someone? Let's say someone who's not intending to hire you for the duration of the project?
That's normally depends on the size of the project, because the projects do vary from one to another.
Okay.
There are projects in which we can prepare a bill of quantities within a week. Others you may need even up to a month. For malls, we have done the malls. And so such projects will need, may need say a month to
Okay.
prepare. But so it normally varies depending on the size of project and of course the scope at hand. And
Okay.
before I move from that, on that material schedule, it's also important for clients to know that if you have, say, food base and you want to do construction,
Right.
whereby you are buying the materials and giving out a labor-only contract. It simply means that you must be able to, you must first get a schedule of materials that you require that will guide you now in doing in making the purchases. Because if you don't have a guide, it normally means that the food days or whoever is doing the construction can request for more materials than they require.
Right.
That will open now a room for them to misuse the materials and even steal from you.
Right, right. Okay. I'm glad that we mentioned that. It's important to just have all these documents, have an idea how much or how many items or how many bags of sand you're going to need for your project so that the fundi on site is not, just randomly just, saying, hey, we need 10 more bags of cement. You provide 10. We're at this stage, we need another 50 more bags of cement. And for those who don't understand, building in Kenya is not cheap. You know, building in Kenya, cement is expensive all around the world. So when you go for one bag of cement that is 900 shillings, you realize that before very long, you've put in, 100 bags of cement and and you're like, okay, where did all the cement go? So, but had you come to the table and talked to a QS and knew that you needed maybe 300 bags of cement for your project, um, it would have avoided all these, random messages where you're getting a message, from someone and saying, hey, we need a few more bags of cement. And you're like, wait a minute, but we've already budgeted for that. And sometimes what happens is, people are taking it and, misusing it or, it's just disappearing. We call it falling off the truck, like the bag of cement just fell off the truck. So I want to move on to the next part, which is more like real life advice for people who are really thinking seriously about building in Kenya. And I want to address, people who are thinking, I'm talking about local people who are local in Kenya, and then those who are also in the diaspora. What are some of the common mistakes you see people make when, building in Kenya?
So one of the major common mistakes that clients make is one, to trust foodies over consultants. You find that so many clients will be convinced by foodies that I've built so many houses, so I know these things how they
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
and you find that a foodie cannot even be able to tell what budget should you have for a certain type of project, and what happens is that most clients now end up with substandard buildings built for them. They also end up with unfinished buildings because if you don't have the right professionals on board as you're doing your project, then it simply means that you cannot be able to have any control. You don't have control over what happens on your project. The foodies will take charge of the project. There is no quality control. There's no cost control. And then you invest in a project worth millions of money. Then all of a sudden you are told your house collapsed. You
right,
can
right.
imagine the kind of loss that you undergo. And
Yeah,
then, of course, when you don't have professionals on board, no one will advise you that you need, say, the insurances, which
right,
is a very critical and important document in any project. Because if you don't insure your project, then in case of any eventuality, then the project will stall. An injunction will be made. You can't continue with the project, and so many things can arise. So it's the most critical thing is hiring experts and for your project. They will guide you. They'll make your building your project construction an enjoyable one because you will enjoy the whole process.
absolutely.
You also learn a lot, by the way. You learn a lot, but I know even in your case, by the time you'll be done in your project, you have learned a lot as
Oh,
far as construction is concerned because
oh, I have.
you
I
that
really
slowly
have.
learn from the experts.
I have, and I really appreciate that this whole team came together I appreciate the architect for actually having a team. And then I think I just want to, I guess, take a step back and say, just trusting him and saying, because he said, I have this group of trusted consultants, and anybody who's going to work on a project I have drawn, I've already done all the vetting. So it's almost like I placed trust in the architect. But now, 10 months, 11 months, almost 12 months later, I can look back and say, he was right, because the people that I've, the consultants that I've worked on my project are actually a group of trusted individuals. You guys know what you're doing. And I feel like this whole time, you guys have pretty much been my guide as we're walking forward. And you guys are saying, oh, watch out for that. Oh, watch out for that. Or this is the way we need to go. So I really want to take a minute and just say thank you for everything that you've done for me. Um, Another question would be, how do you handle clients abroad? So let's say for me, clients like me, how do you handle clients like those as a QS?
So how we handle our cards who are upload, of course, we normally at the from the very initial stages of design, we do engage the client and hold meetings every now and then, so that we can be able to brief the client on the progresses that have been done in terms of the design and the projection, what the preliminary estimates that we are looking at. We are also now able to guide the client even now on the process of engaging a contractor. We advise the clients on the suitable contractors to undertake the project, like we did in your case. We also now evaluate their bids and the likes. That makes the whole process a bit easy for a client who is outside the country, because and even those who are here anyway. Uh, that ensures that you get the right things done, even from the word call. Everything is done and done smoothly, and then at the start of the project, we always advise and ensure that the client, we have a camera installed, one or two cameras or several of them installed, such that even if you are abroad or wherever you are, you can be able to view the progress of your site any minute, any day. And that, of course, gives you, even as the client, you're able to have much more confidence in what's been done, and you also don't feel like the things are being done without your knowledge, because you are able to have a clear view of what exactly is happening on the site. And that also now eliminates the room in which you find so many people send money back at home for construction projects, for development. And then they come to realize when they come, they visit back the nation, they only to realize nothing happened. The photos maybe that they were sent and everything was for another site and not their, and not their project. So it happens a lot. You find a client telling you, I had built a whole house and completed it,
Yeah,
but nothing was there.
yeah.
So it happens.
Um, it's funny that
And
you
so
mentioned that because, one of the, consultants we have on this project is Patrick, the electrical and mechanical engineer.
yeah.
And, the cameras were, he's the one who was, just private chatting me and saying, hey, we recommend these cameras. And, to give context to anybody who might watch this interview, first of all, the cameras that I bought, you can get those cameras for 10,000 shillings, 20,000 shillings. The Wi-Fi box from Safaricom was less than 5,000 shillings. Okay, so maybe we're at 15,000. The monthly top up for the data bundles, the cameras I have in Kisii, it takes about 2.5 months to 3 months before I burn through 2,000 shillings. See, the cameras are not live constantly. All I do is dial in from where I am here, and then I can turn on the camera remotely, and then I can view what's happening. I can record on my phone, and then, after maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, I'm done. That provides me the reassurance that what I'm looking at is the camera that I planted or mounted right there.
Sure.
And I also have, Patrick also has access to the camera. So it's not just myself, the client from the diaspora looking at that camera. I also have a trusted team of consultants who are looking at that and saying, yeah, what you're seeing on that camera is the project we are working on. Not randomly you planted a camera, somebody else just takes it and plants it in front of another construction site and says, look how much work we've done, right? So
Yeah, sure.
I think it's important people realize that the cost of, just taking these preliminary steps of planning and making sure the right people, the right equipment is in place will save you millions as the projects go by. Because there is nothing more frustrating than sending money to Kenya to show up and look at some of the work that has been done and then just get that sinking feeling where you're like, this does not meet the standard that I have. And I have always advised people, and I always say this, never betray your own standards. And one way you betray your own standards is failing to plan. There's something you said the other day. What is it like? If you don't plan, what is that thing you said?
If you don't plan, you are planning to fail.
Right. So if you're not planning, doing all this work before, you're literally planning to fail. So I think I want people to, take that and, spend as much time as they need to plan for their project so that when the implementation phase comes around, things can go smoothly.
The
Yeah.
Bible says in Luke 14:28,
Mhm.
that suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? That's what the Bible says. So even
Wow.
even the Lord knows that the
Yes.
very first step that you should take is you have to plan, and planning means you also to do cost planning, to
Right.
budget for your project so that you do it to completion.
Awesome. I'm glad that you at least put that, Bible, verse in there because I know, people who go to church, they watch this channel and thank you for preaching and sharing that, we are not just making these things up. These things are even written in the Bible. Like take your
Sure.
time, plan
Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
actually embark on any journey in anything. This could be career-wise, this could
Yeah.
be academics, this could be construction projects. So it's
Exactly.
important that people take time and plan. So can you address, there's a question, and actually somebody asked me this the other day. What are some of the challenges you face working in Kenya construction industry?
The Kenya construction industry, the major challenge is infiltration by quacks, people who are not competent enough to handle projects, and they fight their way, and they are the ones who are now handling projects. See now the major challenge is that most clients cannot be able to tell the difference between quacks and professionals, qualified professionals.
Mhm.
Mainly, especially if the client have not had another construction project. I know in your case, I know you can be able to point out, to pick out one and say this one is not fully qualified because you have had the experience of
Oh yeah.
working with professionals in the field. So that, of course, another challenge, the major challenge that we have is that the clients now ignoring the consultants' inputs in their projects, and so you find that a client started a project. He have no budget, clear budget. He cannot be able to tell what whether the monies he have will be able to complete the project. He or she cannot be able to tell that the quality of work that's been done is up to standard. So those are some of the challenges that we face, and of course they have their way. They get their plans approved. Plans which does not meet the functional requirements. They are not. You find that some buildings are not fully functional. They don't meet any the requirements, the regulations that are existing. Some are even encroaching in public spaces and ways and the likes. But you still find grants are developing this project, and the project continues. There are no inspections that are being done by consultants because the client have not engaged professionals. There are no consultants are engaged. And then eventually you will find some of these buildings corruption and killing the workers and killing people, and it becomes a disaster. So
Oh,
but we can only pray that the government, gets serious in the regulations and pushes these bodies to do the right thing. But of course, even the government is at fault, because you find the government imposing more and more taxation on construction materials and the rights, posing a
right,
challenge, pushing the cost of construction high, and becomes unaffordable to many.
right, right. Okay,
Yeah.
that's very well put, and um, I kind of just want to kind of like bring it all back together, try to wrap this up because I know it's 6 o'clock over there, and it's probably time for supper, and getting ready to call it a day because there's another long week ahead. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning the amount of quacks in the construction industry in Kenya. It's almost very challenging to find the right person to do a project. What advice would you give somebody who's trying to build their first home in Kenya, whether either they're local or in the diaspora?
So what I would advise potential developers and clients want to build in Kenya, whether you are within the nation or even in the diaspora, is that get experts in the construction industry at the very initial stage of your project. You see, for example, if you want to do rentals, or you want to do a project that you want to sell, because people who are doing apartments for sale and for selling, and others to let. And for you to do that project, you need professionals to advise you on the suitability of that project. Are you doing the right project at the right place? Because you can do say a certain residential project in a location in which you in your mind thinking that it's an ideal location for such a project, but then you end up making losses. The returns on investments are not making sense, and that's where we come in. We prepare feasibility studies, study reports, and which you of course you have to, as a client, you have to identify a location, or we even identify a location for you, because some clients are in the diaspora and they intend to build, say they want to be generating an extra income back at home, and they want to develop, a flat or a block of apartments. And for you to do that, you have to engage us. We do feasibility studies. We advise you on the best location for your project, where you can do the project based on even the regulations, the zonings that are there. We also advise you on your return on investments, whether it makes sense for you to invest there, the type of units that you want to do. Are you to do, say, 1-bedroom units or 2-bedroom units? Are you to doing 3-bedroom units or even studio units? So that guidance and advice that we give you is very essential for you to, before you make that decision to invest. Because if you don't do that, you'll be investing, you'll be planning to fail. And you find that there are so many developers who end up with the project unoccupied. We do have so many unoccupied buildings, complete buildings. Someone have invested millions of money, but the location is not ideal for the kind of target clients that he was looking at.
Okay.
And you end up making losses unnecessarily. And it won't cost you much to engage us. It won't cost you end up saving so much, because we even got the extent of even marketing some of these units for clients. Like, for example, in our company, we have there are several Chinese companies that have engaged us to market their units. They have we are offering project management services to their projects, and that gives them an upper hand in everything that they're doing. You find that by the time they even complete the project, most of the units are sold, because like the Chinese are doing most of the units to sell. So by the time they are completing the project, most of the units are sold. Their return on investment is so good that they're able to now undertake so many other projects within a short period of time.
Wow.
So one of the challenges that Kenyan and most Kenyan developers face, and even those in diaspora, is that point of ignoring the expert advice, failing to consult the right people.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you mentioned that. And to anybody who might be interested in building in Kenya, please take time, consult, speak to, Mr. Gatitu here, get the advice. I'm sure you offer consultation calls, right?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, great. And are those consultation calls free, or does somebody has to pay you to talk to you, right?
It depends on the extent of the consultation because consultancy is normally time-based.
Right.
So once we determine that you are the kind of consultation you require us to offer is will consume because I'm good the number of hours or so, then it simply means that we may be pushed to charge you for that.
Okay.
And
But
and
you do offer.
we charge that based on the regulations that are set. Actually, we call it cap 525 that regulates architects and quantity surveyors.
Okay.
They do have a fee schedule for that such kind of consultation.
Okay. But you
Yeah.
do offer, let's say, like a discovery call or like a discovery communication. Somebody sends you an email, hey, Mr. Gatitu, I want to see if I can use your services. Do you offer like, maybe like a 10-minute or 15-minute discovery call where they just tell you what they're doing and then you're like, okay, you know what, we can come in and help you, or you probably don't need our services. Is that something you do?
Yeah, we do. We do that. Knowledge is for the world, so we
Right.
are always free to give advices to our clients and potential developers.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Now I know we're kind of crushed for time, so I have three more questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
Would you recommend your job as a career path for somebody who's in high school or in college?
Definitely, I would do. I would do because it's a very enjoyable profession to be in, and I do enjoy offering our services to our clients and even to the world at large because we do offer our services to all sorts of clients from financial institutions like banks. They do consult us a lot. Ideally, by the way, for banks. For you to be given a loan, say you are a developer and you want to do a project using a loan from a bank will always require you to submit to them a bill of quantities that will be analyzed by their own internal people. So sometimes we offer services to the bank as project managers, their own internal consultants to analyze now the bids and the bills that are submitted by potential developers for projects I want to undertake. We also offer services, to insurance companies. So the field is quite wide. It's quite wide. It's quite wide, and of course, there are so many opportunities that come up, and the construction field is always evolving. It's a basic, housing is a basic requirement. So
Absolutely.
to never stop. We always keep on having new and new projects coming up each and every day. So the opportunities are there,
Yeah.
and it's quite an enjoyable field to be in.
Okay. So right now, let's say somebody's about to graduate as a quantity surveyor from, let's say, KU or Moi or Nairobi University. Well, should I say University of Nairobi? What does the job market look like for QSs coming out of college right now?
The job market is good. It's not yet flooded. I think not so many people have been exposed to this field and the QS
Mhm.
part of it. You'll find that there's like say in engineering, there are quite a number of graduates who are engineering the field who have no jobs. But in QSing, the job market is good.
Okay. So would you
Yeah.
recommend, let's say, suggest for somebody who did, let's say, engineering, maybe go back and get, let's say, get a certificate or something in being a quantity surveyor? I mean, I'm assuming they're pretty good with numbers at this point. but maybe get a certificate in, being a quantity surveyor or something like that, and then explore the field and potentially become a QS down the road after they gain some experience?
Yeah, I would encourage one to do so because see, I've mentioned you can offer your services, say, to a bank, you can offer your even to insurance companies.
Right.
For an insurer to compensate you for a loss, say, of a building, say a building caught fire, and then you require to be compensated. They will always come to us to offer the services. So there is quite the field is quite wide.
Let's say somebody's in college. I have
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 nieces and nephews. They're all in college right now. Some of them are graduating this year. Do you
Yeah.
offer internships at your company? They don't have to be paid. They could be unpaid internships. But do you offer something like that?
Yeah, we do offer internship. We have to pass the knowledge to the upcoming generation
Right.
because we can't be there forever. So we do offer internship to the new graduates and even attachments to
Oh, okay.
students
Okay.
who are continuing with their education because normally it's a requirement for students in their third years or so to be engaged to seek attachments. So we do offer that to the young generation, and it's good, just good to to make them grow.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. I know we've spent a lot of time talking. I want to let you go, but if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or your company to request services, how would they do that? How would they get in touch with you? Do you have social media? Is there an email? Is there a phone number they can call or reach or text or something like that?
So our company is GEEN Consultants, and we have you can find us in social media. You can also find us and in the email. Our email is GEEN Consultants Limited at gmail.com. But my contact, you can contact me directly, which is the easier way, either through WhatsApp or through phone call. You
Okay.
can get in touch with me on 0723 381794 for those who are within the nation. For those outside the nation, you have to use the code plus 254 723 381794.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'm going to link all this information in the video, but other than that, I really just want to take time and say thank you very much for taking the time out of your Sunday evening to talk to me, to possibly share this knowledge with anybody who might be watching, because I think it's time we change the narrative when it comes to construction in Kenya. The days of, we just hire somebody and just do it. I think we need to leave those behind to, our great grandparents or grandparents. Now there is a different generation, a generation that is, has a lot more information at their fingertips, and we have to demonstrate to them that there is another way of doing things, especially construction. So, Mr. Gatitu, I want to thank you very much. And any closing thoughts before we hang up?
My closing remarks, of course, one, I would like to thank you for taking your time to interview me and to tap some of the knowledge that we possess. Because knowledge belongs to the world, that's always the case. So we are always free to share with the world and what you know about construction and the expertise that's required for a project to be successful. And it's normally our happiness to see any construction project running smoothly from the inception stage, the design stage to completion. And that can only happen when you have the experts on board. And construction should be a smooth journey for any client, whether you're in the nation or in the diaspora. Shouldn't be a hassle or something that's giving you headaches. It should be a smooth journey. And for that to happen and for it to be a smooth journey, to engage us, reach to us, we will assist you where you can. And we also thank you as one of our clients. We are happy to serve you, and we are looking forward to completing your projects maybe in the next 1 month or so. I know it's almost now at the tail end, so we are good, and we appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you very much. I thank you again. You will have a wonderful evening, man. We'll talk again.
Good evening.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.